Our topic today is emergency evacuation of Krsto Hegedušić gallery in Petrinja that took place from 7 to 14 January 2021. On December 29, 2020, another devastating earthquake of magnitude 6.4 hit Sisak, Moslavina County, living towns of Petrinja, Sisak and Glina, with surrounding villages in ruins. We have some photos of the center of the town of Petrinja, which was badly damaged, and the gallery of Krsto Hegedušić is in the very center, not far away from the place where these photos were taken. The gallery was found in 1987 in memory of the artist, professor and pedagogue Krsto Hegedušić, who was born in Petrinja. Apart from Hegedušić's painting, the gallery holds artworks of numerous significant Croatian artists. After the earthquake, Ministry of Culture and Media, along with local conservation department from Sisak, formed a team from the Museum of Arts and Craft, the Museum Documentation Center, the Klovićevi Dvori Gallery, and the Sisak City Museum for emergency evacuation of museum items to a new, safer location. In Sisak City Museum, we did the identification, documentation, protection, and storing of museum objects. It was made by an expert team from my house, Museum Documentation Center, from the Museum of Arts and Craft, and from the Sisak City Museum. As you can see the photos, it was taken outside of gallery. The circumstances were not in our favor because the grounds were shaking constantly from smaller earthquakes, and we weren't allowed to enter the premises. So the evacuation was done with the assistance of the Croatian Mountain Rescue Service, and most of the paintings that weren't of a large scale, smaller paintings, were taken out through the roof window. Because it was the easiest way for them to do it. What we did there at that place is just try to do immediate packing and to transfer the museum objects to a safer place, Sisak City Museum, that is 15 kilometers from Petrinja. Here you can see all the engaged parties from the museums that I mentioned earlier. It was a very quick evacuation. We tried to be as efficient as possible. And here you can see the photos of packing them to the van and unpacking them in Sisak City Museum. The next part of our work was relocation of museum objects to temporary storage. The Sisak City Museum hosted objects from the Krsto Hegedušić gallery because the museum, the building, this part of the museum was safe to use, and it was, as I already mentioned, 15 kilometers away from Petrinja. The space where we placed the museum objects is the space that Sisak City Museum used for its temporary exhibitions. It was big enough, there was enough space to place the metal shelves, and it was safe enough. And Ministry of Culture and Media provided all the necessary supplies, metal shelves and wrapping material, acid-free wrapping material for museum objects. This photo is a bit out of focus, but you can see how it looked like when we took the museum objects from the vans and put them in the space before identifying and all the other work that we did in this part of evacuation. Here you can see a photo of metal shelves that were placed in the space of temporary exhibitions, and already a few boxes with the museum's items inside. And what we wanted to do is try to be as precise as possible to help the professionals from City Museum and from the gallery of Krsto Hegedušić to place the museum objects. And here is a photo from above. You can see that we had a work area, the table where we had all the documents that we used. You can see still metal shelves in parts, and the wrapping material that we used for the work that was in front of us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dunja Nekić, and now I will continue in explaining the process of documenting and identifying the objects that came from the gallery of Krsto Hegedušić to the Sisak City Museum. As we already mentioned, the evacuation was as efficient and as quick as possible to avoid the rain that was oncoming, and as well as avoid further tremors from the earthquake. So once the objects arrived at the City Museum in Sisak, we already had a list that was taken from the collection management software of Ministry of Culture and Media, dated in 2015. Of course, we anticipated that there would be another amount of objects that was located in the collection after 2015, which we did not have on the list. So auxiliary lists for those objects were handwritten while we did our work, as well as we located a large amount of objects which had maybe old identifying mark but no new ID mark, or had no mark at all. But we all kept auxiliary lists with precise descriptions, so that we may later on identify maybe objects if their marking fell or something else. So all the damage that we noticed was as well noted down on those prints. You can see here on tables, we had the printing of the list from 2015 and also auxiliary lists. One person was always in charge just to keep track of what we were doing. Others were with the restorer from the Sisak Museum involved in wrapping and packing and locating the objects within the temporary holdings of the Sisak City Museum. In total, we identified 430 museum objects. 291 had inventory number according to which we registered them in our list. 139 objects had a temporary identification, and they were also photographed, as well as all the other objects in question. Here you can see on the right side one of the prints from the management software, collection management software, where we noted down the all markings along with all the relevant information that were already there, the photo of the object, and the place where it is located now in the Sisak City Museum. Also, after each workday, I took it upon myself to keep track of all the handwritten lists and make an Excel spreadsheet with all the relevant information that can be then extracted to do a statistical analysis of how many objects were found, if there are other markings such as old markings, if it was found, if it wasn't found, or maybe it was a part of war damage from the earlier period, also as well as the location on the shelving and the number of boxes if it was placed on the box. Here you can see that every object was photographed front and back. On the back, we photographed the markings, the ID number, so that we can see and name as such in the folders that were attached to our report. Also, objects with no ID and not objects with ID and not found. So since 2015 were also photographed front and back with their adjoining number, as well as objects without ID, but they were photographed with the temporary number in picture that was taken. Also, another list was made, so the transcript of our work notes was made with every box and every location and the total number of object and identifying numbers or maybe description if the objects in question don't have ID number. So for instance, here you have box 8, you have shelving A2 and the inventory number, and here you can see that in place there is box 8, the place it is, and the inventory number. Also, we kept track the number of objects on each box so we could have a total in question.
Hello everyone, my name is Dunja Vranešević and I will tell something about preservation. Parallel to identifying and documenting museum objects, other assignments included packing and securely storing objects in temporary storage. Every object was inspected, photographed and wrapped in Tyvek, bubble wrap or other material suitable for museum objects. As was already mentioned, the Ministry of Culture and Media provided the equipment and wrapping material. Here are some examples of packing different types of objects. This is a sculpture made of paper mache from 1992. The author of the crucifix is Croatian sculptor Stjepan Gračan. The sculpture was tied to the base for support and secured from moving. After the packing, the sculpture was attached to a shelf and covered with Tyvek for protection from dust and other particles. Other example is packing and storing paintings. Paintings smaller in size were wrapped, tagged, and placed in cardboard boxes. Larger paintings were wrapped and placed directly on shelves with painted layers of nearby paintings facing each other and the other way around. This is an example of a painting on leather. After the wrapping in acid-free material, it was additionally supported with PE foam. Here you can see the placement of objects on the shelves after the packing. Security measures. To secure temporary storage from theft and vandalism, extra safety cameras and security alarms were installed. Storage is also supplied with a data logger for tracking temperature and relative humidity. After storing objects, security ropes and metal ribs were placed on the sides of metal shelves to prevent potentially new damage to objects due to the ground constantly shaking because of the aftershocks. Also, all the shelves have been connected and fixed to prevent them from falling. To conclude in numbers, the evacuation of the Krsto Hegedušić gallery after the earthquake on December 29, 2020 included a team of 10 experts from several cultural heritage institutions. After the relocation of objects in designated temporary storage, identification, documentation, and protection of salvaged museum objects did the team of 4 museum professionals. 430 museum objects were found, inspected, photographed, packed, and stored. 139 museum objects needed to be assigned with a new temporary ID. For all the above mentioned work, it took us 6 days or 304 working hours. It needs to be pointed out that evacuation and relocation had to be done quickly because it was just one of the endangered collections on the area that was constantly under the vibrations from aftershocks. Furthermore, temporary storage needed to provide space for the relocation of other movable cultural heritage. At the same time, all the tasks had to be done in a small team because of the pandemic. Here are the members of the team in temporary storage after the finished work. Team in the storage consisted of different museum professionals, 2 senior curators, Dunja Nekić and Iva Validžija, a documentalist, myself, and a conservator restorer, Neven Peko from the Sisak City Museum. I have to mention another colleague, Ivona Marić, a documentalist at the Museum Documentation Center, who also helped in the storage. Thank you.